Roro told us we all have to think about AI, and then as a skeptic, I thought about what would make me more comfortable using it, right? So what would be needed that I think, yeah, that's usable. So I do a recap. People who know our features and company know that already, but we are quite experts in attestation. So we did key attestation some time ago to make the audit process easier, to prove that the key is in the HSM and which kind of attributes, which SCAR policy it has, and so on. And when the key was created, you just want to know everything about that. Then we talked to auditors and they said, well, that's good to know all the things about the key, but we also want to know everything about the cluster. How big is the cluster, which firmware it has, how many managers it has. So then we said, okay, let's do device attestation as well, to do an attestation signature of all the different config and diagnostic and logs stuff. We actually put the device diagnostic as part of the new wizard in the new device, in the 3. Firmware. So after the wizard, you have all the attestation as an export. If you have our root key store, then you have the signed logs, the signed config, the signed diagnostic on the stick, ready for archive to show your auditor. So we are in attestation business. Now, code execution attestation, we talked about the vault code, where we want to know which code was executed to which input at which time, what was the output. I want to know everything about it. So obviously, my jump to AI attestation is quite close, right? So when I think about AI and I feel a little bit uncomfortable, then I would say, if that is used in a critical environment to make critical decisions, we know there are AI tools to analyze your MRI or for cancer detection or like a banking. You have big companies who have internal AI models that are fed with the internal documents and the internal wiki conference. And you want to make sure that these models have been used. And if you use AI in your business process, you don't want the employee, I asked some model, it told me that. You want to know exactly what did the model say and which model did you use, so that you are sure it used the internal model and all this kind of stuff. So, or if you do it for transaction decision making, you have some responsibility and you want to trace what was actually the output. Not that then the employee said, AI told me last week to do that, so I did it, and you can't trace back if that was actually true. So what I said, I would want to know who requested the operation, what's the input query, when was that executed, which model was executed, and what was the response. If I have that all, then I could say, okay, now I can actually use that output and it's part of some audit trail, and I can have confidence to at least know it's our internal model or which model, which status, which type was used, and not just like in the early days when I was young, oh, I Googled it, so it's true, right? So then, okay, if you want attestation, then of course you need a signature. So you have integrity, then it cannot be changed. You want a timestamp, so you actually know when that was created. And most favorably, you would also want authentication of the end user who requested it and of the model with TLS certificate to say, to who did I talk to? So that's actually my goal when I was thinking about AI. What should we do? I want to do AI attestation. The architecture we built, because I make a little demo, is actually quite simple. I just said, okay, I have a gateway in between. He knows what's going as input. He knows to which model he's forwarding it. And he gets the output before the user, and he is using the HSM for timestamping and signing and gift attestation, and can then prove what the end user actually got for an answer. Most favorably, you also need HSM for PKI certificate and all that stuff. But so, demo. Let's make it easy, because I don't really care about the question. You see there on the left, I could choose different kind of models. I have different providers that I can choose. I have my connection to the TSP, so it can use it for signing. And then you get the evidence report. So you know which model it is. You have the query, you have the response, you have the signature, public key, the attestation certificate. So that was like my version of what I want to see. And there is also a download if I want to archive that. This was just created for the SUDC. So it's not, let's say, if we would have a full product, then you wouldn't want a manual download. Then most probably you would have an archive where it's automatically sent to. But for now, that's what it is. Yes, that's the main idea. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with our certificate chain. So we have the root key feature. So in a second channel, the root key is published on our website, because you can't have everything from one source. Otherwise, you could fake the whole thing on your laptop. That always creates a device key with the serial number of the device. And within the partition, we have like attestation key. This attestation key is also used for the key attestation and so on. I have a full video from a different colloquium to explain all that in case you want it in more details, the whole certificate chain. And so you have in the partition a signing key, AI signing key, that is used for AI attestation. So with this certificate chain, you also know which HSM was used and so on. Then let's talk about MCP, because just asking text is not that exciting. So we saw this morning, it's actually about additional tools that are given access to for different purposes. So you could have calendar or email or so on. And Roro demonstrated this morning, we did actually do it for our REST API integration instead of a GUI to interact with it and give access to that tool. So in this context, that's again the screenshot of this morning, where this is the tool that was actually used for the answer. So in this context, I also want to have attestation. I want to know which tool have been used for the answer, which tool has access. If you have different agents, if you then have a network of handing over different queries, I want to know which agent was involved and which agent called which other agent and so on. This can go quite complex, as also if you go into the MCP area, that's quite complex if you then have 20 agents talking to each other. So we don't build a product for do the MCP attestation. Instead, I was looking for a company who was already in the MCP space and were already the AI expert, but then we had to explain to them what attestation is and why it is important, and convince them that they build it into their solution because it makes sense. And it was actually quite easy to get them on board, because they say, we never thought about that, but that's actually nice that you can trace what happened. And they had a feature on a dashboard where you see what happened, but you cannot archive it for audit, and you don't have a trace later. So we had to have different talks. We explained them the API and told them like, hey, we want you to give you evidence about what was happening, and build that into their product. And that partner is Prefactor, and he will then introduce his solution where the collaboration now took him.
Yes, so we're Prefactor. We're focused on building the agentic identity platform. And the introduction was made just before Melanie came on, was fantastic, very accurate. At least I know if this doesn't go so well, I've got a job at Securosys, so that's brilliant. Thank you very much. But ultimately, I've been building and selling software for the past 15 years. We are venture backed by some world-class institutional capital, and that has allowed us to invest heavily in this space as one of, I believe, one of one or two companies in the world that are focused exclusively on MCP authentication and attestation. And I don't believe anyone else is doing the work that Securosys and us are doing here today. Simon, my co-founder and CTO, has 25, 30 years worth of experience building systems from the ground up, from very technical solutions to enterprise grade security. And so ultimately what this has given us is a broad lens on what's important to businesses like yourselves, highly regulated organizations who need a solution to support them through their agentic journeys. So those of you in the room, I'm sure this is a conversation that you either had or will have. You're either delegating down or you have been delegated responsibility for your AI agentic strategy. And I think that what's really key is that this space is moving so fast. As I mentioned, MCP has really only been around for a few months so far, and it is moving at a rate of knots. And so what we're finding is that the challenge that companies like yourselves are trying to kind of overcome is, well, we've got engineers, we've got customers, we've got C-suite who are pressuring us to be ahead of the curve. We want to innovate, we want to leverage these amazing technologies so that we can improve productivity, we can do more with less. And we've all seen the headlines, whether it be on the front page of the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal, companies cutting headcount to ensure that because of AI. And whether you believe the hype or not, ultimately AI is here to stay. And the biggest challenge that we faced with customers like yourselves is, well, how do we match the innovation with the security and avoid that situation where innovation runs ahead of the governance, runs ahead of the security? And ultimately, that's where we found that opportunity. And so I'm not going to go over the model context protocol in too much detail, because I know that obviously Melanie's just provided that, and I think you might have had a session this morning on that. But ultimately, with all new technologies, there comes a moment where it becomes a new attack surface. And so although there haven't been many examples of this so far, what we do know is that there is going to be the first canary in the coal mine, so to speak. And I regularly make a joke to customers of ours that you do not want to be the first, because I'll be using that as a case study in my next sales call. And so what's really key is that, everyone is across the importance of having highly secure MCP servers. Now, there's a variety way of doing that, which we'll come on to. And I think the work that we've done with Securosys, as I say, is world leading in that respect. But the thing to note is that MCP is not a standard that has been around for a long time. It's not stable in that respect, and so it continues to change. And so Prefactor and Simon have been very closely involved in kind of the ongoing changes, whether that's related to authentication, whether that's related just to general security. And so one of the challenges that we speak to companies about is how do they stay up to date with those changes? How do you invest ahead of the curve so that you're not left having old technology? And I think that's really, really, really important. But ultimately, we do know that there are risks that already exist. So this was an article that came out about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And many of you probably know this, but a lot of the early innovation that's happened around MCP servers, testing out the boundaries of what is and isn't possible, has been done through indie devs. And so lots of people jumped on the MCP bandwagon. They listed these servers online, and they realized that, actually, there's lots of them that don't have any security attached to it. And so ultimately, you could be downloading an MCP server, and you could just be completely listing your key, your API key on your laptop, or just not having any kind of authentication, which, when you think about it, is crazy, because ultimately what you're doing is you're giving someone an open door or an open goal to your API internally. And so that's kind of where we see that opportunity. So I guess from Prefactor's perspective, we have 2 different types of kind of MCP use case. The first one is what we would describe as external MCP, or customer-based. So this is the more kind of generic example that you probably come across. User accesses a customer agent like ChatGPT. It uses model context protocol to communicate with that cloud software. So there are a number of marketplaces and registries that are existing today. And for those of you that may not know, Grasshopper Bank in the US was the very first company, or very first bank, to expose itself to MCP to their customers. So customers in the US, for the small Midwest bank, can go in and query their bank details or their balances. I don't know whether, being an MCP, that would be something that I would choose to do. So if you've got any Grasshopper Bank customers in the audience, I'd love to have a chat with you afterwards. But I feel like that sector is more focused on what we would describe as enterprise internal MCP. And this is where the relationship with Securosys has really come into the fore. So these are organizations like banks, insurers, technology companies, but also slightly more companies that maybe you wouldn't expect to have innovating in this space, manufacturers, mining organizations. And really, this comes back to, like, what is your agentic strategy and what is the return on investment you're trying to generate? Because technology is useless without a business case. And so ultimately, what we've been speaking to is companies that are investing in their own enterprise chatbots, whether that's LibreChat or Web UI, or maybe they are using the enterprise-grade solutions like ChatGPT and Claude out of the box, leveraging agent orchestration. But the kicker here is not that you are integrating with external software. It's how do you get the most value from your existing tech stack? And so a great example I often get quoted is, today, in big organizations, it can take weeks or months to get the right level of data at the right time. So whether it's a dashboarding team that sits in a corner that provides that information, or whether it's just protocols that need to go through to enable that. And so a huge growth space is, how do you access your data faster? How do you give back ownership of that so that they don't have to go through teams to make it work? So I guess kind of just summarizing a little bit of kind of what I said. So you've got these 2 different types of MCP use case that we see. We've got the external and we've got the internal. The internal are kind of customer agents needing access to your platform. And then the internal are those workforce agents that need enterprise-grade control and security. And I guess what Prefactor offers is around having that chat interface, or rather this MCP security that sits around that. So you can hand off Prefactor and your chatbot to your internal staff, and you can be confident that with Prefactor and Securosys' enterprise banking grade security, you can be sure that everything's going to be covered. The agent identity control is a very, very key part about our vision. So one of the key problems we're solving for, beyond the kind of the core security layer is, well, you are inevitably going to be dealing with the problem of you have agents all over the shop, agents sprawl. And so how do you know who's doing what where, and how do you ensure that they're managed effectively through their life cycle? And then finally, kind of the activity audit piece, very, very important. And having that built into your platform from the beginning is absolutely key. And this brings us to our relationship with Securosys. So as Melanie mentioned, we have been working very closely with them over the past few months. And yeah, I'm not too big to admit, they definitely had to teach us a little bit about what they do and their API. But it felt like a very natural partnership. So very excited to share a bit more. I'm just going to pass over to Simon, who's going to do a quick demo, and then we'll come back and if there are any questions afterwards. Simon.
Hi there. Yeah, so what we're going to show you is sort of outlined on this diagram. So at the top level is going to be something similar to what Melanie just showed you. So because that's where the conversation started, I guess. So we're showing an agent with a chat interface. So it's simple on the surface, but there is a lot going on underneath. Yeah, within that, the user interacts with the Prefactor Secure Agent platform. This is a product that's under development. Our agent identity platform is a lot more established, but this gives you an agent that's unique to you, which means that that agent can have different permissions and things like that, and we can track that separately. And then immutable conversation logs, it's configurable with different LLM backends, and it also acts as an MCP client, so it can control MCP servers within your enterprise. So it gives you a familiar interface, gives your users a familiar interface, but with enterprise features layered in. All the requests to the LLMs and the backend MCP servers are signed using Securosys Cloud HSM, and this gives us a really high quality immutable log that can be used for various purposes. So agent and human identities are managed in the Prefactor agent identity platform, and that basically can wrap around your existing human enterprise identity platform and provide seamless user and agent identity through to MCP servers and backend systems. So there doesn't need to be sort of multiple authentication steps for your users and things like that throughout. So I will just share my screen. Matt, if you just want to... let me get this ready. We can see that. Yep. So yeah, what I've got here is, so we're just looking at the chat interface. I've already started a chat. There's a set of tools behind this agent that are sort of pretend banking tools. Does it make sense? So I've started a conversation with the agent, and we can see, what I've asked it. It's gone and asked the agent that is then done a tool call to the back end, and the back end has come back with some account details, and then the agent has given that information back to me. We can click on the details and jump into it. We've created JWTs for each of the things signed using the Securosys platform. Within those JWTs is basically the entire payload. In addition to this, as I said, each of the requests to the backend systems are also logged separately. So this is the conversation train, and then the backend systems are kept as well. And we can see my identity, the Prefactor backend identity for me. And yeah, if we jump into the agent's response, it's a very similar thing. We've got this signed payload. And then within we can see the language model, all that sort of information, the response ID back from Anthropic. And we can see its identity also kept separate from my own identity. And within the payload, we can jump in and we can see everything that formed part of that response, including the tool call. So basically the agent came back said something to me and then initiated a tool call, which the client then goes and does separately in the back end. And we can see similar thing for the tool response coming back from the MCP server. So I can sort of do another request here and just sort of ask what's balance in Swiss francs, and it will go away and do that. So we can see the preview of the responses coming back as it streams things, and then each one is signed using Securosys as well. So yeah, each of these things, and so that's just done a sort of use the exchange rate tool in the back end, but you're all familiar with MCP. So yeah. And if we jump into the back end, I'm not going to show you everything about sort of identity platform, but there's quite a lot of depth to it. It's very configurable, but yeah, what we can see is the agent identity and the human identity separate. So in audit trails, they will show up separately. You can have different permissions, things like that, as I said. So if every one of your employees has an agent dedicated to them, that can be given specific tools for that agent. And so there can be a lot more control over who can do what. And that all feeds into the idea of autonomous agents that may be working with a set of permissions that no human in your organization has, or it's a much reduced set of permissions and that sort of thing. But yeah, as Melanie said, when Securosys reached out, it did fit very well into what we saw coming for MCP. It's really important that this sort of deep signing is there for a bunch of sort of auditability reasons that enterprises need. And there are working groups within the MCP sort of discussions that are trying to get these enterprise features built into the standard. But what we're able to do here with this demonstration and sort of building this end-to-end system is start getting some of those things done before the standards are there, and really sort of prove that out. But I'll hand back to Matt now, and I will stop sharing.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Simon. And I guess just to recap everyone what we've covered. So, Prefactor, we're an identity company. We have built out a chatbot where we have integrated Securosys' solution, which enables you to track, audit, secure your enterprise chatbot with whatever model that you want. We are in production today, so if anyone wants to have a chat to us afterwards, we'll have to be virtually, unfortunately, until I get myself over to Switzerland. But feel free to book a meeting or get in touch with us directly at prefactor.tech. Melanie, over to you. Or not, in that case.
All right. Thank you, guys.